When I think of Alaska, I don't want to see Israel Keys in my mind. I wish I could see the majestic mountains, the glistening glaciers, and the endless forests. But then I remember Samantha Koenig's story and the existence of a man like Israel Keys. Someone who roamed these very same mountains, glaciers, and forests with a sinister purpose. A man who had kill kits hidden in every corner, ready to strike at any moment. Sometimes, even the most breathtaking places can hide the darkest secrets. You know, sometimes when I study these cases, it makes me real mad because these criminal minds are a little bit hard for me to follow. You really have to study what they did, learn how they did it, walk the tricky steps of manipulation and lies they walked until they get caught, and it makes me tired. It makes me angry with the criminal, like, I shouldn't have to be studying stuff like this, you sick jerk. Like Israel Keys. He makes me really mad. He's very twisted. This case is pretty dark, really deep, so viewer discretion is advised. Israel Keys originated from Utah. Israel was the second of 10 children born to Heidi and John Jeffrey Keys. Now, the couple did not believe in government interference, public schools, or modern medicine. His parents were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. In other words, they were of Mormon faith. By the age of 5, Israel's family moved to Washington, and they lived isolated in the woods without heat or electricity. For years, the Keys children had been forced to sleep in a small tent outside their very cramped one-bedroom cabin. Additionally, the children were forced to hunt for their food, chop firewood, and work on farms to support their struggling family. Now, Israel eventually started acting out. And believe me, I totally get how frustrating it is when you hear that someone had a harder childhood and ends up hurting people later in their lives because, a lot of you have had the childhood from hell too. And so, this is something that you would never even consider. You're a good person. But, Israel's parents were kind of weird. They were parents that were moving around a bit and joining different churches. And by the age of 14, Israel knew that he was into things that other people just were not into at all. He did things that were clearly not okay, but in his mind, it set him apart. He didn't think the things he was doing really made him feel that bad. He broke into neighbors' homes to steal their guns. He loved hunting and pursuing anything with a heartbeat. Anything. Let that sink in. Occasionally, he was with another young kid breaking into these neighborhood houses. And it was all fun and games until this kid ended up watching Israel kill an animal. He couldn't shake the image of the innocent creature being snuffed out by the hands of Israel. So the child began to avoid Israel, not wanting to be associated with someone who could so easily take a life or hurt something with a beating heart. Occasionally, his parents took in friends of theirs who needed shelter. Israel, again, just by the age of 14 at this point, ended up torturing a cat in front of some of these other children. I'll spare you the details on how gruesome it was. The cat actually got sick. Like, he made a cat physically sick, okay? And one of the boys who witnessed what Israel did also got sick when he saw that it was making the cat sick and the things that were happening to this poor innocent creature. So the boy ended up running and telling his dad. He's like, oh my gosh, guess what's up? You'll never believe what this guy Israel did to this cat. After this kid informed his dad about what Israel did, Israel became antisocial. He's like aware at this point that other people were not like him, which was pretty much everybody. Nobody really had a lot in common with a guy like Israel. Israel would say, people found out about some of the things that I did, and that's when I started doing stuff by myself exclusively. A young girl who was a member of the church that his family attended recalled Israel, just his presence in the church, and she said, made her skin crawl. Now, as Israel continued to grow up, his parents ended up moving around a bit more, and the religious walls closed in pretty hard on the family children. The family, the adults, were trying all these different religions out. And I really wouldn't say that their trials of these different religions were very positive. One of the churches that they were attending was very racist. It was called the Ark. And guys, religion can be really uncomfortable, and even change is very uncomfortable. So when your parents are leading your family into all these different religions and churches and all this change is going on, we have to remember that the central point in all of this was this God that they were trying to get their children to serve and follow. Like, God is in the middle of all these things that make Israel feel different, make the children have all these rules. Like, the way they live and the places that they went, there were all these really hardcore rules that were placed on the children. And of course, they were all associated with, you know, God. Like, don't listen to this kind of music. Don't watch that on television. Don't have a sex drive, you know, for the opposite sex or for anyone in general. Just don't. God won't approve. I really hate when people do this. It's such a misunderstanding of who God really is. This guy, Israel, was troubled. His parents took away the joyful things in the name of God out of his adolescence. And for that, you know, he grew up to be this very twisted and sneaky young person. And because of this, in my personal opinion, he grew to learn that, you know, God sucks. That's what he learned. He learned God doesn't like fun. Worse, he started doing really evil things that were overlooked. So anyway, this is like a really bad dynamic. The guy needs help. He ends up announcing to his parents that he's a full atheist at this point. And after that, they disowned him. And they told his siblings to disown him as well. Like, how could you, Israel? How could you not believe in God? By the way, I am not a doctor. So I am not the one to say that this turned Israel into any type of way, like a sociopath, a psychopath. I'm not saying that, but I am telling you, in my opinion, the force of God put on these children, on the Keyes children, while the duties and responsibilities to raise these children with full neglect and ignorance from the family, from the parents, is definitely adding into the depths of darkness overcoming Israel. Obviously, in my opinion, this was all done wrong. If you ever associate God with rules and consequences and a forced nature, if that's how you feel about who God is and the existence of God, in my opinion, then it's a misunderstanding. It's wrong. So Israel is obviously mentally sick, and now he is disowned by his family, you know, which hurts. It hurts anyone to just be cut off like that. So he's angry, and he decides that he's going to go opposite to God as he can go, Satanism, because that makes sense for Israel. He's dark. He likes to hurt things. With God, he was shamed. He felt like he couldn't relate to anybody in his circle. He felt judged. He felt like God really sucked. And so now he can totally be for what he stands for, which is mostly Satan. And for him, that's fine. So then after that, he plans to take all of his rage and anger out by committing something far more heinous than he's ever done before. It's like not hurting animals anymore. It's not just offending your parents anymore. It's not sneaking and breaking into the neighbors anymore. It's murder. By 1997 and 1998, in Oregon, Israel had attempted his first murder, but it only led him to commit a serious crime. Israel ended up SAing a teenager, and he declared it was rough and violent. Investigators to this day have not been able to find a report of that rape. They believe that whoever that young girl was has lived with this and that authorities were not alerted at the time. He had been able to lure this young girl away from her friends, and, you know, she was out tubing with them that day near the lake, and he kidnapped her against her will while he violated her body at knife point. He was originally planning to follow through with a full murder of her as part of his satanic ritual, but he ended up letting her go back to the river tube that he abducted her from. He said, "I was too timid. I wasn't violent enough. I made up my mind after that I was never going to let that happen again." On July 9th of 1998, Israel relocated to New York, where he enlisted in the U.S. Army. Although no crimes were reported during this time in Egypt, he did reportedly tell a fellow soldier that he would like to kill him. If anyone ever says something like that to you, you know, best believe it. Like, why doubt it? It's a threat to life. And just because nothing was being reported at this time doesn't mean that it wasn't happening. Later, Israel admitted to attempted rapes on women. One was a sex worker in Egypt, and another was a college student that he met while he was on leave in Israel. Israel, the guy, was still really troubled, and he began to drink very heavily on the weekends as he maintained being very antisocial with society. February 2001, he received a DUI before he was honorably discharged in 2001. Once he settled into Washington, he met a woman online, and the two ended up having a daughter. In 2007, he moved to Alaska to live with a nurse practitioner that he had been dating and brought his daughter along with him when he left. That same year, he started his own business called Keys Construction, where he worked as a handyman, a contractor, and a construction worker. By 2012, an FBI report stated that Israel Keys burglarized 20 to 30 homes across the United States and that he had robbed several banks beginning all the way back in 2001. While this seems to be a lot of news, a lot of crime, there is one very infamous crime that got Israel Keys caught. It's extremely interesting to uncover the details of the crime itself, and naturally, super sick and disturbing. And you know that I love nothing more than to bring awareness to our victims and give their life meaning, so we will do that here very shortly. Before we do, we must understand that the crime that got Israel caught in the first place was the last crime that he ever committed in society that we know of. The final crime truly opened the floodgates to his secret double life in robbing, arson, and, killing, and all the things on this very long list of criminal activity that he'd been doing all these years. Turns out all these years, Israel was setting up murder trails for himself all over the United States. Yeah. How's that for wishing Alaska was just beautiful and you'd never see a face like Israel Keys? Get spooked some more, why don't you? Because it was anywhere and everywhere that this man looked for his next thrill to kill. Israel did not have a victim profile, stating that he chose his victims all over the place and randomly. On his murder trips, he kept his mobile phone turned off and he paid for items with cash while having no connections with the victims whatsoever. June 8th of 2011, Israel broke into the Currier home at night in Vermont, where 49-year-old William Bill Scott Currier and his wife, 54-year-old Lorraine Simone Currier, were tied up, driven to an abandoned farmhouse where he ended up shooting Bill and he essayed Lorraine before strangling her to death. Poor Bill put up a fight too. He really fought for their lives to be spared, but Israel had been determined for a long time to finish what he showed up to start. To accomplish this crime successfully, Israel flew to Chicago from where he lived or where he was staying, and from Chicago he rented a car to drive 1,000 miles to Vermont. He then used the murder kit that he had hidden 2 years earlier to execute the murders successfully. After the murders had been committed successfully, he moved most of the kit's contents to a brand new hiding place all the way in Parrishville, New York, where they remained until he would be arrested much later. Israel Keys is believed to have killed 11 people, of whom these 2 victims, Bill and Lorraine, were confirmed, as well as his final victim that had been identified. And the final victim's name was Samantha Koenig. Getting into the story of Samantha. At this point, Israel lived in Anchorage, Alaska with his 10-year-old daughter and his girlfriend, Kimberly. And Israel had never killed so close to home before. On April 1st of 2012, Samantha Koenig was just 18 years old, and she had some big dreams, you guys. It's said that she wanted to be a potential veterinarian, that she had a very witty personality, that she was funny. Naturally, you look at her, she is totally gorgeous. And she had been currently at that time holding a job at a place called Common Grounds, which was a coffee shop in Anchorage. So that night, before 8 p.m., Israel Keys walked up to the window and he ordered some coffee. When Samantha went to hand him his cup of coffee, he pointed a revolver at her and he told her it was a robbery, and he ordered Samantha to turn off the lights. It's said the moment she did, He bound her hands, jumped through the window, stuffed a handful of napkins in her mouth, and he forced her out of the coffee stand and into his pickup truck. Seems brave, especially considering Samantha telling him that her father was scheduled to pick her up that night from her shift within minutes. But prior to this decision, Israel had been listening to a police scanner, and he learned that police were more occupied on the other side of town with a much bigger crime event. So as long as Samantha did what he needed her to do, and he was moving with haste, this could work. So once she was in his pickup truck, he then drove her to his house while telling her that he only wanted to hold her for some ransom. Upon arriving to his home, he swiftly went inside and told his girlfriend that he was doing work out in his shed as she showed herself to bed. Israel's daughter had already been in the home sleeping that night, and he was paranoid about getting caught, so he threatened Samantha right away. Don't make any noise, as he led her from the truck to his shed. He ended up tying her up in the shed, laying down a sleeping bag with 2 space heaters on that chilly night. So here they are, and back at the coffee stand, it was actually Samantha's boyfriend named Dwayne who went to pick her up that evening, but he was a little surprised when the stand was completely dark and closed down. He went back to the home where Samantha's father and him and Samantha, they shared living, and that's when he told her father that she was not there for him to pick up. Well, it turns out that Dwayne and Samantha had gotten into a little tiff earlier that day, so Dwayne was really shocked and emotionally hurt to learn that Samantha was staying with friends for a few days upon getting a very random, kind of hateful text from her that night. And it didn't really sound like her, but you know, she was upset and they were feuding, so he was just kind of at the house trying to kick back with her dad and figure it all out. Well, shortly after, Dwayne heard a disturbance in the driveway of their shared home with Samantha's father, and Samantha's truck was parked in the driveway. It said that he opened the door and he saw someone with a knife and a mask near her truck, who ended up making eye contact with Dwayne, and he swiftly ran away from the property. Kind of weird that they never reported the instance that this happened, but later on, Dwayne would say that he didn't think that he could actually report her as missing unless she was reported missing after 24 hours. Still very strange that he didn't report what he saw, but that's what was happening. So, well, the masked guy that was holding the knife next to her truck was actually Israel. While Samantha had been tied up in his shed, he learned that she did not have her ID or her debit card on her. It was in her truck at her dad's. So Israel ended up turning on some really loud metal music to avoid Samantha's potential begs or cries or screams for help. And he ended up going a short distance to her father's address, where he broke into her truck and he was able to get the ID and the card, which is exactly the point that he was caught with the knife when Dwayne opened the door. Upon returning home, Israel checked on his victim, who was still composed. The metal music was still really loud as Israel entered the house, and he poured himself a glass of wine while his mind raced with excitement. His girlfriend Kim and his daughter were still sleeping as his beautiful young target Samantha waited for her release from her captor. But Israel, who had killed successfully before, had no rhyme or reason to release her. I mean, we are talking about someone who enjoyed torture. Israel constantly preferred using strangulation as well, opposed to quickly relieving a victim from life. He took pleasure in watching victims struggle and having control over, when they lived, how long they lived for, and when they would actually die. Sadly, the truth was he was lying to Samantha. He took his wine to the shed and he sat with her and he sipped his wine and he was explaining to her just how this was gonna go. Israel told Samantha that instead of releasing her, he was going to rape her and strangle her with a rope. I can only imagine the horror she felt in thinking that she needed to survive moment by moment until money for her was paid, and watching her kidnapper go get her debit card just to learn it's over. You're never leaving that shed ever again alive. He then violated Samantha, and he took his time in doing so. Before he undressed himself, he stood above her and he stared down upon her. He was glaring at her and teasing her just admiring what he was about to do. He said the circumstances of violating her body took up to 3 songs on the radio, like 3 heavy metal songs, like really loud, cranked up in this tiny shed with these space heaters. Just having this guy do this to you. Unimaginable. 3 songs, I mean, that seems like a really long time. And there was one thing that Samantha asked him not to do to her body. Before he finished violating her completely, he was sure to do the one thing to her body that she had asked him not to do. It makes me curious how literally nobody walked in on this guy taking his time doing this to this young girl with all this crazy music and loud racket going. Like, really? His girlfriend was said to be sleeping up to 5 feet away from the shed. After Israel Keyes took her life in the brutal way that he promised, he rolled her body in a tarp and he placed it inside some cabinets within the shed. By 5 a.m. that next morning, he called a cab to the airport to fly to New Orleans for a Caribbean cruise that he planned with his family. Just like nothing at all. Like, I'm gonna go on vacation after what I've done. I'm gonna ride in the taxi and live with myself. I'm going to board this cruise ship and live with myself. Like, nothing. Meanwhile, Samantha wasn't reported missing until the next day, hours after, unfortunately, she was already dead. And meanwhile, Israel was living his best life on a cruise and had successfully stayed off the police radar due to the disguise that he had worn the night that he kidnapped her. As police continued to hold out hope, and mostly her family during this time, while he's on a cruise, she was literally left dead inside his shed. So normal people look forward to vacations and time with our family, but this guy, Israel, couldn't help himself. Crime was his passion. When he got off the ship with his family, it said he left his girlfriend and his daughter for a few days out in Texas, and he robbed a bank and he burned down someone's house. He stashed the money that he robbed in some more kill kits that he created, and he just hid them away. It's sadly been reported that he could have been killing more people at this time because people were vanishing around this area during this time, but it has not been positively identified. February 17th, when he returned home with his family, he went to the shed immediately, and I just can't imagine the excitement this guy must have felt. Like, ooh, I'm home. I'm gonna go see how Samantha's doing. He ended up taking her frozen body out of the cupboards. And in fact, the body was so frozen that he ended up having to disassemble the cupboards to get her out. This guy, he thawed her body and he did the nasty with it. He used a typewriter, a Polaroid camera, and a newspaper as tools to pull off a very sick idea. What he would do is he would pretend that Samantha were alive and ask for ransom money. How he accomplished the task went like this. Before he disassembled her body, he sewed Samantha Cohen's eyelids with fishing line, braided her hair, and applied makeup to her face. And hey, we don't know whose makeup he applied. Kind of hoping he bought it and it wasn't his girlfriend's, but you know. Then he propped her body up against a wall. He held out a current issue of the Alaska Daily News that he sought from the trash, and he took a picture of Samantha. This was supposed to be proof of life that he intended to use to prove that she was unharmed, and in trade for her safety, alive and well, he was asking for money. By the way, this is allegedly not the real picture, and most news sources will say that her eyelids were sewn open with fishing line, but in reality, Israel said that her eyes were sewn shut with the fishing line, so it appeared that she was like squinting, like her eyes shut. He felt that the look of her squinting shut was pulled off nicely because the effects of her squinting her eyes shut was merely because he had sewn the eyes shut with the fishing line with extreme aggression, like very tight. With a typed note from that typewriter, he wrote up the ransom note. So the actual photo has never actually been placed on the internet to anyone's knowledge, but this is the closest thing that police have released for an idea on how this ransom photo and how he did it appeared to her family.
These people need to give my daughter back so we can get back with our lives. I will do anything. Take me.
Regarding the newspaper that he ended up getting out of the trash, this was used as his alibi. He chose a newspaper that was dated for the time that he was on the cruise with his family. He finalized not being caught with this project by cutting off the edges of that Polaroid and scanned the photo using a printer, and he ended up writing the original photo. Like, this guy thought he had it all figured out, and for a while, hey, he did. Then he found his own disgusting little method of disassembling her body, limb by limb, within the shed to ease his paranoia of getting caught. He disposed of the remains in a frozen lake just outside of Palmer, Alaska to the north, and he took that ransom note to a local park. Then on February 24th, he texted her boyfriend from her phone, and he told him to look for a package in the local park. And it said, "Connor Park sign under pic of Albert. Ain't she purty?" And allegedly the pic of Albert was a missing dog. So there, under that pic of the missing dog, Anchorage police found the photo and the ransom note in a Ziploc bag, demanding 30 grand be deposited into Samantha's bank account. Now, there was some doubt here in credibility of the photo though, because in the original photo with Samantha, remember how he was holding that newspaper close to her head? Well, in the photo, you could tell that whoever's arm that the arm was strong and forceful, because you could tell that there were like muscles in the arm. And if Samantha had been under any kind of duress in that photo, and if she were really alive when that strong arm was, you know, forcefully holding that newspaper next to her, there would have been some tense responses in her body. But in the photo, the original, there just wasn't. There was no muscle showing or no intensity showing with her being under duress. It was just like these closed eyes and this relaxed existence of a body in a photo. So there was already some doubts, like, is this fake? You know, why does she seem like she's just kind of laying there? Meanwhile, back to the money. The 5 grand that was put in the bank account ended up putting police in a wild chase to try to track her kidnapper and her down in hopes to find her alive. At one point, it said that police were looking out of state for her. Police said that there were things in the ransom note that had them believing that her being out of state by this point was a large possibility. Now, her debit card had activity on it the first night, but it was only activity to check the balance, which there was no money on it. So for about a month after the money had been deposited, the card had nothing, no activity, silence, no balance inquiries, no withdrawals. So they put this track on the debit card where they would know within 10 minutes if there had been activity linked to her card once the money was deposited. So within days of Samantha Cohen's parents depositing money into her account, her debit card finally started pinging. First, it was in Anchorage. Then it was in Arizona. Then it was in New Mexico. And then Texas. It was a hairy process in the beginning because once the pinging would happen at random times and areas, by the time authorities would get to the ATM and they thought they had their guy, he was gone. And when he was there, he was wearing these really big jackets, these ski masks, and these glasses to hide his identity. And also because he started going all over the place at the same time, and it was so random, the places, the times, there really was no way to know who this person was or even what he was driving. He had become really good at doing this at really strange times, and he was able to hide the identity of the vehicle, himself, etc. And it was really freaking police out because somewhere in the note, there was some insinuation that if he ever thought police were onto him, that he would hand off the card to a random person in need. So once the card pinged out of state, you know, they were getting scared. They're like, is this him? What the hell? However, an error finally occurred, and not long after, while Israel was using the card on the go. In addition to the masked man, an ATM camera in Arizona had captured a white Ford Focus that Israel had rented and had been driving. So the FBI comes in and they're like, oh, we're on to something here. Like, this guy is traveling this direction, and they figure out that he's traveling east along what's called Interstate 10. By March 13th, a Texas state trooper in the town of Shepherd spotted the car in a hotel parking lot. It said that he waited for the driver to come out, get in the car, and that he followed the car until the car went just a few miles over the speed limit. Woo! The lights flashed and Israel was immediately pulled over. Knowing that this guy that was on the run from the ATM camera in Arizona was driving a white Ford Focus, this was his actual goal, was trying to find somebody like Israel in a white Ford Focus. Ironically, Israel never hesitated to let the guy search the car because he asked, "Can I search the car?" And he's like, "Sure." Well, inside, he found Samantha's ATM card, her cell phone, and the same disguise worn by the man captured on all the ATM cameras where Samantha's card had been used. So they arrested Israel, where he was extradited back to Alaska. There, he took control, as he often so loved doing, and forced FBI to sign agreements to not release his information to the public in trade for him discussing crimes and giving them answers that they would want. His motive, he said, was to protect his daughter. And, while that might seem like, a very kind and merciful thing to do for his loved one, I declare it's opposite, and here's why. When this sick guy was dismembering Samantha, his little daughter was knocking on the shed door several times, asking her father to come inside. And he would crack the door open, while he was, in the middle of his little adrenaline rush and what he was doing to someone else's daughter. And, he would just talk to his daughter through a crack, and then he would close that door and keep on keeping on. I don't think that Israel Keyes ever thought about his daughter's well-being over the pride and joy that he found in hurting other people. I don't think that Israel Keyes understood a father's love in the first place and being able to take people away from their innocence or take their lives from them. I personally can't help but agree with this very small clip here that he was out to protect himself only.
He starts to tell the story to the investigators and then he backs off. I think he's doing that because he's trying to create some excitement in the room and trying to kind of tease them like cat and mouse. Look, the excitement he had before was raping and killing. This is like small potatoes. It's all he can get, but he's going to get it as much as he can in the interview. The fact that he is leaving out the sex assaults is because he's trying to minimize the heinous nature of what he did. And he doesn't want the public to know that he dismembered Samantha Koenig, because psychopaths are grandiose. He may feel that he's saying that he doesn't want his daughter to find out, but I think there's an inherent narcissism in psychopaths. It's a part of the disorder. And on some level, they sort of feel proud of their acts. They feel they have fantasies that they may be celebrated, may go down in history, but this dismember part doesn't make him look so good. So he's trying to prop up his image a little bit there.
When we were going up there to recover Samantha, we were told that she had been dismembered. And she was in 5 separate pieces weighted down. But we were also told that Keyes made a demand that he did not want that part of it leaked. He didn't want the part that she had been dismembered leaked to the press. So we had to be very careful. Normally, when we recover a victim like this, we would bring each body part up in a separate body bag for the medical examiner. They don't like those commingled when they do their analysis. But in this case, we put Samantha all in one bag and brought it to the surface, because the media was at the shorelines with cameras and stuff, and we didn't want to clue them in, because Keyes made that demand that he didn't mind, that it getting out there that, he sexually assaulted and murdered her, but he didn't want his 11-year-old daughter to know that he had dismembered her. It's a really strange line that these guys draw sometimes.
Yeah, we see back when he was a teenager, and once people saw him for what he was, which was like this animal, he then isolated and snuck around to do it, and he drank a lot to numb himself. It's also said that he really liked true crime, and he took a very special liking to Ted Bundy. So I get that they did what they had to do for that time in order to get some answers out of him. But when you hear Israel talk, it's like he had all the power. He had the control. He was giggly. He was laughing, and he's picking and choosing what to say and what not to say. They were at his mercy. Tell us what you can. And he'd be like, I'm not going to talk about that. I'll tell you a little about that. He also demanded an execution date very quickly. In May of 2012, Israel Keyes tried to escape from a courtroom after breaking his leg irons during a routine hearing. Fortunately, his escape attempt was unsuccessful, and authorities restrained him again.
What's changed since yesterday? more inputs.
Yeah.
And what's changed for you? Nothing. Possibly additional charges.
Facebook.
Right, but I mean, still, even still, from their perspective, I mean, come on, let's face it. Yeah, what happened yesterday? Ooh, I'm a bad guy. I tried to escape, but let's be honest. Nobody really thought I was a good guy before that, so it's not like being escaping suddenly makes me untrustworthy. I was kind of untrustworthy before that, so.
And on December 2nd of 2012, Israel Keyes managed to conceal a razor blade in his jail cell at the Anchorage Correctional Complex in Alaska, which he used to take his own life. And pretty gross the way that he did this. He used milk cartons that were empty to catch his blood from coming out of the cell. And he ended up tying a sheet around his neck. That legit is very hard to talk about. Ugh. He left behind a message of poetry, which, I will not read here because I believe in the power of words from the dark side, and it's, this dark, poetic crap. So who knows what those words would bring in. Plus, he's a nutcase, and, I don't care to read his work. But the additional message he left was a picture of 11 skulls, drawn with his own blood, labeled "We Are One." Officials suspect this alludes to the total number of his victims, the final photo being very satanic, and they're thinking that that was, him declaring that he's Satan and he was his own final victim. So, moral of the content here, I have some things to say. And I'm going to say it to you like you were my very own. Watch what you dabble in. Halloween is coming up, and, I love me some Halloween. I do. I really do. I love the holiday and the cheer that comes with a child's smile and the kids that go around and fellowship within the community. The buckets of candy and the spirit. I love darker vintage and the color black. I love it. But Ouija boards and, superstition and witchcraft, I don't know. It's wild stuff. Without judgment to others, I'm telling you, you do you, but don't say that I didn't tell you so, and please be warned. I've had some weird stuff happen to me personally when my path crossed paths with someone else that was within the hemisphere of playing witchcraft or playing with the Ouija boards. Weird. And again, as if you are my own family, I will tell you, you really want to be aware of your surroundings. I am a total watcher of my surroundings and a definite thinker of the what ifs. A lot of these people end up traveling. They're doing traveling for work. If you think back on Rodney Alcala, he was this traveling photographer. Some of these people are really smart and creative, and others are just really quite literally very stupid. I just want my loved ones to be safe. It's perfectly okay to look around the room and try to understand the energies within it. It's okay to join the gym and not go running by yourself. It's best to meet somebody on a date or for the first time if you're selling something and that person's, hey, I'll meet you here to buy it, whatever, in a public setting. It's okay to be deemed the helicopter parent if it means that your loved one is going to stay safe. And if anyone ever told you to not trust yourself or you're crazy or that's just in your head, that's an intrusive thought, I would just listen to your conscience. For real. I completely am a supporter of that. So I'm sure most of you guys have heard about this case, but what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comment section down below. In the meantime, thank you so much for tuning in. Hug your loved ones, honor your husbands, respect your wives, take time for yourself, always be aware of your surroundings. Your life is priceless. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful week. I'm Chelsea J. Be blessed.